Hi, I'm Pranamya and you're watching Pages of the Globe. So if you're new to my channel, I essentially read stories. I will tell you a little bit about the author, a little bit about the historical context of the story, and then I'll read it to you. And then I'll give you an in-depth analysis of what happened, what are the themes, what are the symbols, what are the motifs, how does this relate to what is happening now today, what type of social or societal commentary is the author trying to show us, what are the subtle or not so subtle messages that are intertwined within the story. I've also read some poems on here before, but if you want to know more, feel free to check out the pinned video that is on my channel. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. So the story that I'll be reading to you today is called The School by Barthelme. So The School is a very short, sharp, and strangely funny story. And it takes place in an elementary school classroom. And it essentially has this teacher who is recounting a series of increasingly odd and troubling events. And despite its length, the story explores some very big themes like innocence, death, and meaning. And it has this sort of surreal, absurd edge. So if you're into anything like that, then this is definitely the story for you. It is particularly known for how quickly it shifts its tone. And so if you liked one of my other videos, Orientation by Daniel Orozco, you might like this story. So I don't want to reveal too much, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the author, Barthelme. But if you don't want to hear that, that's totally okay. Just keep pressing the skip button until you come to a screen that should just have the story title in there. So Donald Barthelme was born in 1931 in Philadelphia, and he grew up in Houston, Texas. He is considered a very important figure in postmodern American literature, and he's known for his experimental style, fragmented narratives, and dark humor, which is very apparent in this short story. His writing often blends satire, absurdity, and philosophical reflection. He began publishing stories in the 1960s, with work appearing in The New Yorker, where he was a regular contributor. Some of his most well-known short story collections include Unspeakable Practices, Unnatural Acts, published in 1968, City Life, published in 1970, and 60 Stories, published in 1981. The School was first published in The New Yorker in 1974, and it was later included in the collection 60 Stories. In addition to short fiction, Barthelme also wrote novels like Snow White, published in 1967, and The Dead Father, published in 1975. He's won several prestigious awards like a Guggenheim Fellowship and the Pell/Faulkner Award for Fiction, which he gained after his death or posthumously. He passed away in 1989, but his legacy lives on as a master of the short story form, especially for his ability to be able to blend humor, strangeness, and like I said before, philosophical depth, philosophical meaning in a way that not many can, and a lot of people try to attain. Without further ado, let's get on with the video. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next. The School by Barthelme. Well, we had all these children out planting trees, because we figured that was part of their education, to see how, the root systems, and also the sense of responsibility, taking care of things, being individually responsible. You know what I mean. And the trees all died. They were orange trees. I don't know why they died. They just died. Something wrong with the soil possibly, or maybe the stuff we got from the nursery wasn't the best. We complained about it. So we've got 30 kids here. Each kid has his or her own little tree to plant, and we've got these 30 dead trees. All these kids looking at these little brown sticks. It was depressing. It wouldn't have been so bad except that just a couple weeks before the thing with the trees, the snakes all died. But I think that the reason that the snakes kicked off was that, you remember the boiler shut off for 4 days because of the strike? And that was explicable. It was something you could explain to the kids because of the strike. I mean, none of the parents would let them cross the picket line, and they knew there was a strike going on and what it meant. So when things got started up again and we found the snakes, they weren't too disturbed. With the herb gardens, it was probably a case of overwatering, and at least now they know not to overwater. The children were very conscientious with the herb gardens, and some of them probably, slipped them a little extra water when we weren't looking. Or maybe, well, I don't like to think about sabotage, although it did occur to us. I mean, it was something that crossed our minds. We were thinking that way probably because before that, the gerbils had died, and the white mice had died, and the salamander. Well, now they know not to carry them around in plastic bags. Of course, we expected the tropical fish to die. That was no surprise. Those numbers, you look at them crooked and they're belly up on the surface. But the lesson plan called for a tropical fish input at that point. There was just nothing we could do. It happens every year. You just have to hurry past it. We weren't even supposed to have a puppy. We weren't even supposed to have one. It was just a puppy that the Murdoch girl found under a Gristed's truck one day. And she was afraid the truck would run over it when the driver had finished making his delivery. So she stuck it in her knapsack and brought it to school with her. So we had this puppy. As soon as I saw the puppy, I thought, oh Christ, I bet it will live for about 2 weeks and that's what it did. It wasn't supposed to be in a classroom at all. There's some kind of regulation about it. But you can't tell them that they can't have a puppy when the puppy is already there right in front of them, running around on the floor, yapping. They named it Edgar. That is, they named it after me. They had a lot of fun running after it and yelling, "Hey Edgar, nice Edgar." Then they'd laugh like hell. They enjoyed the ambiguity. I enjoyed it myself. I don't mind being kidded. They made a little house for it in the supply closet and all that. I don't know what it died of, distemper I guess. It probably hadn't had any shots. I got it out of there before the kids got to school. I checked the supply closet each morning routinely because I knew what was going to happen. I gave it to the custodian. And then there was this Korean orphan that the kids adopted through the Help the Children program. All the kids bought in a quarter a month, and that was the idea. It was an unfortunate thing. The kid's name was Kim, and maybe we adopted him too late or something. The cause of death was not stated in the letter we got. They suggested we adopt another child instead and sent us some interesting case histories, but we didn't have the heart. The class took it pretty hard. They began, I think nobody ever said anything to me directly, to feel that maybe there was something wrong with the school. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the school particularly. I've seen better and I've seen worse. It was just a run of bad luck. We've had an extraordinary number of parents passing away, for instance. There were, I think, 2 heart attacks, 2 suicides, 1 drowning, and 4 killed together in a car accident, 1 stroke. And we had the usual heavy mortality rate among the grandparents, or maybe it was heavier this year, it seemed so. And finally, the tragedy. The tragedy occurred when Matthew Wayne and Tony Mavagardo were playing over where they're excavating for the new federal office building. There were all these big wooden beams stacked, at the edge of the excavation. There's a court case coming out about that. The parents are claiming that the beams were poorly stacked, and I don't know what's true and what's not. It's been a strange year. I forgot to mention Billy Brandt's father, who was knifed fatally when he grappled with a masked intruder in his home. One day we had a discussion in class. They asked me, where did they go? The trees, the salamander, the tropical fish, Edgar, the papas, and the mamas, Matthew and Tony, where did they go? And I said, I don't know. And they said, who knows? And I said, nobody knows. And they said, is death that which gives meaning to life? And I said, no, life is that which gives meaning to life. And they said, but isn't death considered as a fundamental datum? The means by which the taken for granted mundanity of every day may be transcended in the direction of... I said, yes, maybe. They said, we don't like it. I said, that's sound. They said, it's a bloody shame. I said, it is. They said, now will you make love with Helen, our teaching assistant, so we can see how it is done? We know you like her. I do like Helen, but I said that I would not. We've heard so much about it, they've said, but we've never seen it. I said I would be fired and that it was never or almost never done as a demonstration. Helen looked out the window. Please, 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 they said, we require an assertion of value. We are frightened. I said that they shouldn't be frightened, although I am often frightened, and there was value everywhere. Helen came and embraced me. I kissed her a few times on the brow. We held each other. Just children were excited. Then there was a knock on the door. I opened the door and the new gerbil walked in. The children cheered wildly. The end. Alright, so that was The School by Donald Barthelme. It's a very, short but surreal story that kind of starts off with like some kind of sad events and then increasingly turns into a very a recounting of strange, morbid events that happen in this teacher's elementary classroom. But the tone is very calm, matter of fact, and it very much reminds me of Orientation by Daniel Orozco that I read just a few days ago on this channel. Despite the rather bleak events, the story does seem to end on a surprisingly tender and ambiguous note. So let's go into a deep literary analysis of what is happening in the story. So first of all, what is the narrative style and structure? Well, it's very minimalist and deadpan, right? The way that the author has written this, it's very clipped, it's full of irony, the tone is very flat, it's emotionless. And this is sort of creating a disorienting contrast because there's these very disturbing events being described and taking place, but then there's this deadpan delivery, which is very important. It's key to the story's absurdist and comic effect, because that is the effect that the author is going for. Also, the story is being told in first-person narration. So this story is told by Edgar, who is this teacher, who has a pretty calm demeanor, and he seems to have this lack of emotional response. But the thing is that actually amplifies the bizarre and tragic happenings. If he was showing genuine remorse, or not remorse, it's not this guy isn't apathetic, I wouldn't say, but if he was showing shock and surprise like we all are, then the story would be normal. It would be he could be oh, unfortunately this happened, and then surprisingly this happened, and then even more surprisingly this happened. But instead, he just has this dispassionate tone, and there is a reason behind this. There's always going to be a reason behind why stories like these are written, so let's go into it. What are themes that are shown here? So first of all, we just have death and mortality, obviously. Death is constant in the story. At first, it's just simply plants and maybe some animals dying. But it ends up escalating to human deaths. There are many parents passing away, even more grandparents. It's scary to think about. And the author here is using repetition and escalation to blur this line between ordinary reality and the surreal. And it kind of shows how death at the end of the day can reach you anywhere. Even in this school is supposed to be a safe place, right? It may not be the most entertaining, but it should be a safe place. But death can be anywhere. There's a very dark irony to how these children have become so desensitized to death, while these adults are just kind of confused and helpless. They just don't understand what's going on. There's another theme here of innocence and education. First of all, this is happening in a classroom. In Daniel Orozco's Orientation, the setting is an office. This is very different because it's happening in a classroom, and there is a reason for this. I would say this is very symbolic. Schools are where children are taught about the world, right? But instead about learning about math, science, history, reading, these students are learning about loss. They're learning about grief and existential dread. It's critiquing how institutions deal with hard truths, which is often very, very inadequately. This teacher isn't even explaining anything. He's just recording events. It seems like the children are having more, are putting a little bit more thought to this than the teacher is. When the children are asking about death, love, and life, and that really strange part towards the end, it shows how young minds often wrestle with deep philosophical questions when institutions end up failing to guide them. The story mirrors absurdist philosophy. This is something that I had to kind of research into, absurdism, and it is specifically that of Albert Camus or Kafka, who are characters who are stuck in irrational, uncontrollable worlds. I started reading Kafka on the Shore, but I never actually finished it. So perhaps this is my sign too. But anyway, the thing is that even though death surrounds these kids, these children, what are they ultimately looking for? They're just looking for affirmation. They want the teacher to say, hey, your life means something. This kind of shows that, this is showing that the type of thought that humans often desire for meaning in a meaningless world, which is a very central idea of absurdism. It is that we are living in a meaningless world and we are for no reason at all looking for meaning here. The last theme I want to mention is hope, love, and human connection. Despite this very bleak story, the ending offers a very strange moment of hope or rebirth. First of all, the children are demanding to see an example of love or connection, which suggests that even in the face of death, we see comfort in intimacy, affection, and human warmth. It's unknown whether this is more of a hopeful ending or just another layer of absurdity, but it definitely does open up like a new emotional register. I would ask that you guys comment down below what you think about this ending. I would say that, it is definitely not hopeful. It does just add another layer of absurdity, but it is to each their own. So what is some symbolism that we see? I already talked about the classroom, right? But I do want to talk about a little more. So the dead plants and animals, that kind of just shows the innocence that, like lost innocence, the failure of nurturing systems. The classroom is just another place of like society. It's a space meant for growth, and it is turning into one of literal decay. The children's questions, that is just them. They're looking for meaning in life. They're confronting existential themes. And then the ending, the kiss, that's just life-affirming gesture. It's like perhaps it could be potential rebirth. Maybe it's like intimacy, or it's just like another part of absurd defiance, like you're in denial of what's happening. So, as a quick conclusion, why does this matter? Why the school matters? Well, Donald Barthelme's The School is a deceptively simple story, and it packs a very heavy emotional and philosophical punch in just a couple pages. Even though it's very surreal and it has like this very dark humor vibe, it examines how we deal with depth, the limits of education, how we crave for meaning in a chaotic world, and its final message that it sends out is very unsettling and almost intimate. It reminds us that even in absurdity, love and connection might be the only answers we have, which is why I know I just said maybe like 1 minute ago that I feel like the ending of this story is very absurd. However, I also believe that it could, at the end of the day, it is like, what more can you do, right? The children's demand for love at the end becomes a radical response to despair. It's like a small rebellion against meaninglessness. I mean, what more can you do here? You can't just sit there and constantly contemplate what is happening, what am I doing with my life? We need some type of meaning. So where are we going to find that? Obviously through, how life begins, where the good parts of life, the parts of life that make it worth living for. That is it for today. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and also comment down below which story you would like me to read next. I read stories from all around the world. I try and make it very global, and also from many times of the world. So I could read a short story that was published this year, a short story that was published 100 years ago, one that was published 200 years ago, whatever it may be. I'm fine reading it. If you guys ever want me to read a book, I would also be open to that. I would be open to maybe reading 2 or 3 chapters, depending on how long each chapter is. I'd be open to reading that as well, and then giving you an analysis on each chapter of the book, and then like a final one. So whatever book that may be, that could be some books that are coming to mind that you guys might like for me to read. Could be The Handmaid's Tale, Animal Farm, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Great Gatsby, The Giver, Pride and Prejudice, whatever this may be. Between the World and Me, that could be one. The Hate You Give, that could be The Lord of the Flies, A Lesson Before Dying. These are like I feel like a lot of these are classics, some of these are more new, but anything that you guys might want to hear from me, or maybe you have to read it in school, let me know and I will give you an analysis, and then you can write it down in your notebooks, do whatever you want with that. But that is it for today. Like I said before, like, share, subscribe, and comment down below.